In the 1490s, there was an additional line in the letters from the Ottoman Sultan to the nobility on the border of the realm of St. Stephen. They were advised to surrender, because no help would be coming. All of the Christian powers were too busy fighting each other in Italy. When King Charles VIII of France made his incursion into Italy in late 1494 to claim the throne of Naples and allegedly lead a crusade against the Turk, he set off a chain of events that broke the regional balance of power and began a decades-long conflict for hegemony over the Apennine Peninsula known as the Italian Wars, which I will very fortunately not be covering in its entirety, as the whole complicated course of events far surpasses the complexity that was the outbreak of World War I. Within a few months of his incursion, King Charles of France reached Naples, with every prince, duke, pope, and king getting out of his way. Behind him he left a line of fortresses waving French flags, a trail of devastation caused by his army, and among many other things, a Florence ruled by a bonfire-happy fanatic called Savonarola, who condemned the corruption of the temporal world and the Holy Mother Church. The speed of the French advance shook many, including the imperial divan in Constantinople, which sued for peace with King Wladislav II of Hungary and Croatia and reinforced its fortresses in Albania. But in the spring of 1495, King Charles of France, and now of Naples, suddenly found himself isolated in southern Italy. The other Italian polities and a few external actors recovered from their shock and formed an alliance in Venice against the interloper and his formidable army. Everyone was afraid of a continual strong French presence on the peninsula. King Maximilian von Habsburg justified his presence in the alliance through his marriage to Bianca Sforza, the niece of the new Duke of Milan, who barely saved his duchy in the initial French incursion and now wanted his fortresses back. King Ferdinand of Aragon either wanted to restore his cousin to the throne of Naples or take it for himself. While the host of this alliance, the Republic of Venice, had ironically called King Charles VIII to invade Naples a decade earlier, but the situation had changed significantly since, and now a French dynasty was again threatening Venetian trade with a probable seizure of both sides of the Strait of Otranto. As one Venetian diplomat put it, Venice wants to choose its allies, not suffer them. Cut off in Naples and with France now under threat, King Charles VIII decided to pursue a difficult journey back to France. He and his army made it, battered and bruised but not defeated. Almost as soon as Charles had left Naples, Venice helped restore King Ferrante II to his throne, in exchange for control over several Apulian ports, which would only be returned as soon as King Ferrante paid his substantial debts. The situation in Italy was not given time to settle. King Charles VIII had died in 1498, but his cousin and successor, Louis XII of France, invaded Italy again in 1499 to conquer the Duchy of Milan, this time with the help of Venice and the Pope's son, Cesare Borgia. Venice took over the valuable city of Cremona and did little else to help its allies. However, it was facing a crisis on other fronts. Ottoman forces were threatening the remaining Venetian bases in the eastern Mediterranean. Ottoman raids passing through Croatia terrorized the Adriatic coastal communes, and the Ottoman fleet almost put a halt to Venetian shipping out of the Adriatic. Worrying news also arrived from the west. In 1499, Vasco da Gama returned from his voyage around the Cape of Good Hope, and spices bought and sold cheaper than anything Venice could buy in Egypt, began to flow into Lisbon. With its overseas empire in danger, its trade routes raided, its market dominance fleeting, Expansion and security of Venetian holdings in mainland Italy, its so-called terra firma, became a priority. Venice could no longer rely on the turbulent waves of trade, but needed a reliable economic base close to home. This of course meant that some areas of the Venetian overseas empire, its so-called Stato da Mar, were left with less than satisfactory defenses. The Bishop of Trogir begged the Venetian Senate for more aid and reinforcements, describing the horrors of the Ottoman raids outside the walls of the Adriatic communes. It was sometime during this period that the Croatian author Marko Marulić of Split probably wrote the verses to his prayer against the Turk. Svemogi Bože moj, kim svaka postaju, odvrati ur gnjiv tvoj, ter pomiluj naju. Ostavi zlu voju, pozri na verni puk, di tarpi nevoju svak dan od turskih ruk. And in 1501 he wrote the Croatian epic poem Judita. Dike terfaljenja presveto Juditi, smina nje stvorenja hoću govoriti. It is based on the biblical story of Judith, who saved her besieged city by seducing and decapitating the invading Babylonian general, causing his army to flee. Marulić was of course linking the story to his contemporary situation, wanting to give hope that these dark and arduous times would also pass. Venice was looking for solutions to safeguard its Adriatic holdings, either from the Ottomans or some of the opportunistic Croatian nobility. The logical step was to pull King Wladislav II into its web of alliances. However, King Wladislav was hesitant. Joining an alliance fighting the Duke of Milan could cause a conflict with Maximilian von Habsburg. To convince Wladislav, the Venetian allies, King Louis of France and King Ferdinand of Aragon, offered military aid and an alliance via marriage to their cousin Anne of Foix, while Pope Alexander VI and Venice offered to increase their monetary aid. Venice specifically offered a continual yearly payment of 100,000 florins a year during wartime and 30,000 florins a year during peacetime. And to internally push the king into the alliance, Chancellor Thomas Bakac, the Archbishop of Esztergom, was allegedly bribed with a cardinal's hat. The alliances were formalized between 1499 and 1501. Wladislav married Anne of Foix in 1502, but by 1502 several castles in Bosnia had been lost. Venice lost holdings in Albania and a strip of territory in Dalmatia near Makarska. Few victories were won in the Ionian, and Ban John Corvinus fought off the Ottomans at Knin and Jajce. The war was once again stopped by other events. The Ottoman Empire was attacked from the east and the Sultan sued for peace. The peace with Venice was made in December of 1502, and a 7-year peace was made with King Wladislav in 1503. This of course did not stop the border raids. After the death of Pope Alexander VI in 1503, Venice started making inroads into Papal Romagna, where Cesare Borgia had been trying to carve out a realm of his own. Since the start of the Italian Wars, Venice had slowly but noticeably grown its territory, while its allies did most of the fighting. It did not take long for people to notice and to come to the conclusion that they may have been played, as Venice was now on the road to hegemony in northern Italy. To close today, John Corvinus died in 1504 in Krapina from an illness that by some stories he contracted while defending either Knin or Jajce. He was buried in the church of the Pavlinian monastery in Lepoglava. His 5-year-old son Christopher was buried near him in 1505. Their graves were opened recently in 2021 as part of a Hungarian research project. He was followed by John's newborn son Matthias, who died after only a few months. And the last of the Hunyadi line, John's 12-year-old daughter Elizabeth Corvinus, died in 1508. soon after her engagement to George Zapoля. John Corvinus's wife, Beatrice Frankopan, went on to marry George Hohenzollern, the son of the Margrave of Brandenburg-Ansbach, but she also died in 1510.